Do you know what happens when you grow up obsessed with a toy that your parents can't afford because you were born in the third world? You spend the rest of your life trying to compensate for it. You see all those Game Boys up on my wall? There's one back here. There's actually two, there's some, you can't really see it. There's like 4 right here. And it's not even just the actual Game Boys. If I see something with a Game Boy on it, I'll buy it. And that's how I ended up with, I have a Game Boy thermos here. I got a Game Boy mug. There's these playing cards here. Where's my phone? This is my phone. My wallet. My passport holder. This is my throw blanket right here. I would be wearing my Game Boy shirt, but it's in the wash. Do I need to go on? Suffice to say, I love this platform, I love the games, and I spent a good chunk of my life looking for the absolute best way to play Game Boy games. And though this might not be the absolute best, it's pretty high up there. This right here is the new BittBoy. Even though it's not perfect, if you're a fan of the Game Boy like me, you're probably going to love this thing. Let's take a look. So we should probably start with a little history lesson. This is last year's BittBoy. I was sent this by the people over at BittBoy. And though it resembles a Game Boy, this is actually an NES clone. Now, I've played with so many of these little NES clones over the years, and because I didn't grow up with the NES, they don't personally pluck at my heartstrings. It's fun and all, but it's an NES clone. I've had so many of them. It's not the system I grew up with. It's okay. The system had a really nice screen, but that was about it. It came, weirdly, with this slot here on the top, which you would think is for a micro SD card. There's actually nothing here. The reviewers that pulled this thing apart, notice that there's nothing connected to the motherboard on this thing. So yeah, your guess is as good as mine. So this was the original BittBoy. Now for this year, they put out this little puppy right here. Now this is what they should have started with. Now I'm gonna open with the things I didn't like about this system because it's definitely not perfect. So let me show you the unit first. So obviously, as you can see here, it draws inspiration from the Game Boy, and even more so than the original BittBoy, because as you can see, it follows the color scheme on the Game Boy a little more closely than this guy here, with the beige body and the purpley buttons here on the side. Now, on the top, the first thing that you'll notice is that it has that same slot, but this is actually functional. And the review unit they sent me comes with a little micro SD card, 8 gig, which is more than enough for the entire library of the systems this thing emulates. So as you can see, little pocket Game Boy. It's very small, very, very compact. Just to give you an idea, this is my modded Game Boy Pocket. I love this thing. This is, right up until I got this was my go-to system to play Game Boy games. And even when compared to the Game Boy Pocket, which is very, very compact, the new BittBoy is much smaller, much easier to carry. The D-pad is okay. It's not too mushy. It's not too clicky. It's okay. The buttons here, I like that they have this orientation where your thumb will naturally hit both of them without you having to do kind of like this. This is something that always bothered me with the original Game Boy design, where you have to kind of like, obviously you're not going to hold it with your thumb like this. This would be very uncomfortable. You're supposed to hit both buttons with kind of like the tip of your thumb, which, you know, it's not the best way. I've always thought that if these were inverted, that would make for much better ergonomics, and obviously the guys at BittBoy agree, because the buttons are in this orientation here, which just feels much better. So you have B and A, you have these turbo buttons, which also double as function keys, and I'll show that in a moment. You have an R button here, which both resets the system and brings up the menu within the emulators. Start, select the D-pad. In the back here, I just trimmed my fingernails. I did this review in Portuguese first, and I hadn't trimmed my fingernails, so people gave me trouble for it. I did that now, and now I can't open the thing. Let me try this guy here. This one is a little bit more loose. No, I can't open that either. Here we go. Both BittBoys, there we go. Both BittBoys use this little battery here, which is the same battery as the GBA SB. 700 milliamp hour, which isn't bad, though the battery life on this thing could be a little bit better. I'm seeing it being quoted around 3 to 5 hours depending on the brightness setting you have. I would like to see far more than that, like something rivaling the actual Game Boy, which is close to 10 hours. So obviously, like I said in the beginning, this thing isn't perfect, but at least I have 2 of them, so I can actually cannibalize the battery on the old Game Boy and take it with me if I'm going to be away from an outlet for an extended period of time. Speaking of outlets, this thing has a little, let me put this all the way before I lose these things. This thing has a little micro USB port at the bottom here to charge, and this jack here, which you can use both as a headphone jack and to output video to your TV. Speaking of which, let me show you something on the box here. It comes with the cables you'll need for that, which are composite, so obviously it's not gonna look great. I didn't even open this because I normally don't. Whenever I get these things, I don't connect them to the TV that often, but here's what it comes with. There it is. So you got your composite cable here, you got your USB micro here as well. I'm just gonna put that back here. Now, one thing I mentioned I was gonna open with the things I didn't like because there aren't many, and one thing I didn't like actually shows up here on the box. On the side here, you see the BittBoy. They're playing Pokemon here, and there's this green filter over the image, which makes it closer to the image on the original Game Boy. As you know, it wasn't really black and white, it was more like black and green. I would have loved if the emulators on this thing had an option for filters like this. Unfortunately, the emulators on this thing are quite simple. They get the job done, but extra features like this would have been much, much appreciated. So that's one thing I don't like, right? Like, basically so far, 2 things: the battery life and the fact that it doesn't have filters. The emulators are very simple. One more thing I don't like, and I'm gonna have to turn it on here to show you, but it's a minor gripe. You might not be able to see it because my studio is very bright, but there's a little bit of light bleed here, and on the side here, green, I'm not sure if you can tell, but yeah, it's right there. It's not a huge deal. Obviously, this is a minor gripe. This is not gonna affect your enjoyment of this thing at all, but it's something I thought it was worth mentioning. Now, first thing you notice here when I turn it on is that the panel is gorgeous. This is an IPS panel, and there seems to be a little bit of flicker here looking at the monitor I'm using to shoot this video, but this is entirely an artifact of the shutter speed on my camera. In real life, you don't see any of that. It is just drop dead gorgeous. I love this. The viewing angles are great. Of course, it's very, very glossy, and I have big lights here in my studio, so you're getting a lot of glare, but in real life, that's not something you're going to experience. So right off the bat here, you see the 3 emulators this thing comes with. There's the NES emulator, Game Boy emulator, and Game Boy Color emulator. I would have loved to see a GBA emulator. That would have made this thing absolutely great, and it was possible because it has the extra buttons here, right? So it's slightly disappointing that it doesn't come with that, though the people over at BittBoy have told me that people are working on porting a version of Linux on this thing, not unlike Dingux, something I used on my Dingu A320, which is an older Chinese emulation device. So if they ever get around to doing that and this thing becomes able of emulating, say, GBA, this would be the ultimate Game Boy, hands down, no questions. It's so portable, it's so light, the screen is gorgeous, and all it's missing to be the ultimate Game Boy is to emulate the entire Game Boy library. But since we don't have that yet, let's take a look at what we have here. Like I said, NES, right at the beginning here, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color. Now, I'm gonna open with Game Boy Color. So press A here to go down the list. So there's the list of the games that you have, and to get the games on your device, it's very easy. You just drop the ROMs just right there on the micro SD. You don't have to create a folder or anything, and it loads up just like that. Very, very simple. So let me boot up Pokemon here. So as you can see, I'm gonna bring it a little bit closer here. This is absolutely gorgeous. Like I mentioned, the T buttons here on the side, their main feature is to work as turbo buttons for A and B, but they also double as function buttons for brightness and volume. So when I hold select here, as you can see, that's the volume. And it's relatively loud. I'm gonna turn that down again. Okay. And the top ones here are the brightness. So I'm gonna crank up the brightness, and obviously in the process I'm gonna blow up the exposure on my camera. But as you can see, this is a pretty nice screen. Let me turn it down here so you can actually see what I'm showing you. There we go. Now, about the screen, we're gonna run into a few problems as well. As you can see, I'm running the game expanded to cover the entire screen. Now, purists will prefer something more like the resolution of the original Game Boy. So if you press the R button, that is the menu there. So as you can see, you got save. I'm gonna bring it a little bit closer. Save, mode, and display. So for save, it's self-explanatory. This is your save states. Mode is you can switch from full screen to a default resolution, so you press B to go back, and this is more like the resolution on the Game Boy, or it would, because it's not pixel perfect. There is a little bit of distortion on the pixels there. It doesn't look awful or anything like that, but you know, it's not perfect. The other thing that's not perfect about the BittBoy is the fact that it doesn't support native saves. Go back to the way it was before. I prefer this. I'm sorry, guys. I played emulators on the PSP for so long with the screen, like, you know, with the screen stretched. I like that better than black bars. It's just the way I am. I know I'm in the minority here, but it's just the way I am. So, like I was saying, it doesn't support native saves, so which could be problematic for some games, as I'm going to show you here. If I press start, it's showing new game an option, even though I have played this game and I have saved it. But it has save states, so you can press R, go into save, and then there's my save right there. I select it and I go to read, and here I am. I'm right in the game. Now, like I said, some games will depend on the native save feature, so that could be a problem for some games. Now, back to the screen. As you can see, there is a little bit of screen tearing. For me, personally, it's not a deal breaker. Everything else about this package is nice. The size, how many games it runs, the screen, everything else is pretty decent. The fact that it resembles a Game Boy so closely. Look at this thing. It's like a little baby. It's like a little baby. It's like a game baby. But, and this is something that's very common with these emulation devices, you are going to run into screen tearing issues. And the screen, and here's the thing, the screen on the original Game Boys, it wasn't great. So the fact that at least with this one, you're getting color, you're getting very, very vivid color and backlight, I would say that even with the screen tearing, this is still a better experience than playing this thing on an original Game Boy Color. That is Kid Dracula. Let's load that. Here we go. Oh my goodness, I got hit. This game is so great. I see now why it's so expensive in the collecting circles. Let's get the screen back to regular resolution here. Let me know in the comments, what do you like best? Are you okay with black bars, or you prefer to have like a full screen? Is that an enemy? I can't even tell. No, it's not. It's a heart, I think. Oh my goodness, I don't know how to get there. Oh, I need the bat, of course. Here we go. Whoops, I didn't realize that. Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. As you can tell, this is not a game I played a lot of. Oh, there's the mouth again. Ah, come on. Anyway, this is the new BittBoy. It's not without its share of flaws. Like I said, it's not a perfect device. There's a lot of things that I wish they had done better. But this is easy to recommend. I gotta tell you, ever since I got this, I was in the States for the holidays when they sent this, and when I got the email saying that it had been delivered, I was so excited to get home and play with this thing. It's small, it's very portable, the screen is beautiful. I love that I can play all the Game Boy Color, and NES games on this thing, on this one device. Even with all of its flaws, this is very easy to recommend. My litmus test is this: if I find myself actually using the thing on a day-to-day basis, that's an easy recommendation for me, even if it has flaws. But what do you think about the new BittBoy? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. That helps the channel out so much. Follow me on social media. I'm very active over there, both Twitter and Instagram. Let me know in the comments where you're watching these videos from, and that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done. Now let's go suck at Kid Dracula some more. Oh, f.